You know what I don't mind? I don't mind spending half of my Saturday talking about Star Trek. That's what I don't mind.
And that's what we're here to do.
Oh,
I'm excited about that.
you
That was like
sneaky, sneaky boy.
the perfect intro. That was awesome. The sneaky hit the go live button.
Yeah, wasn't paying attention, didn't see that coming.
It's all good. This is, of course, the Unready room, where being unready is our brand. And welcome, everyone. Really happy to have you all here. Thank you so much to everyone in the comments, of course, and in watching later on as well. We really appreciate you. I'm Dan Gunther. With me, as always, is the amazing Brandi Jackola. Brandi, how's it going?
Oh, it's been kind of a weird week, but I'm just happy to be here and talking about Star Trek because that's kind of my favorite thing to do right now. So
Awesome. Well, I mean, that's all of our favorite things to do. A lot of
yeah,
us anyway. So
yeah.
I'm excited. I'm always so happy to talk about Star Trek week to week, and this honestly, this live stream, this little bit has been like a highlight of every week that we've been able
Same.
to do it. Um, Bad news about next week, by the way. Oh, and I've got a phone going off.
No.
Bad news in that I won't be around for the Unready room next week. We'll talk about that, but I'll be at the Calgary Comic and Entertainment Expo, where there's all kinds of media guests and stuff, including John Delancey and Brent Spiner, and William Shatner. But anyway,
William Shatner goes everywhere. He's coming to FanX. That's not a big deal.
He does. It's crazy. He was at Mission Chicago, and then 2 weeks later he's going to be in Calgary, and then FanX, and yeah, he's all over the place. So yeah, might be interesting to check that out though, because he's at least now has some new stories to talk about, because of course he went to space. So we'll probably hear him talk about that, I guess. So
Okay.
Anyway. But yeah, we're not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, the episode Monsters, which interesting title for sure. Definitely interesting to see that come up. I'm like, oh, monsters, okay, fitting in with some of the imagery we've seen. So pretty clear what that's going to be about, given what happened. Excuse me, what happened at the end of the previous week's episode. So
Yes.
yeah, lots to talk about in this episode. It's kind of a weird dividing line in the middle of the episode. There's like the what's going on at the first part of the episode, and then what's going on in the second part. So I guess we'll start at the beginning, which, as I'm told, is a very good place to start. So
Sound of Music reference. All right. All right.
You get it all on the Unready room. I don't even know
beautiful.
references are going to come out of my mouth until they're coming out of my mouth. So
it's always good. I will apologize. I've got like very big hair today and it's distracting.
Oh,
so
never apologize. No.
It's distracting me because I can see
Ah.
myself and I'm just like, oh, what happened here?
It looks good. It's you've got like an almost, I'd say, like season 7 Deanna Troy going on.
Okay.
Just,
Okay. I'll take that.
I'm
I'll
kind of
take
digging
that.
it.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Thank you. Only it was black and so were my eyes and and I was a lot younger. Anyway, never mind. Let's start.
Yeah, let's talk Star Trek. So yeah, as of the end of last episode, we've got Talon, and she's using some technology to basically have like a technological mind meld, as she calls it. Interesting. With Picard. And okay, I was watching the Trek, oh my goodness, the Trek culture video about this week's episode. They always do the ups and downs. I really like that video they do every week. And I got to watch in the video as Sean Ferrick, who's hosting it, came to the realization on camera that the piece of technology that she's wearing isn't just stylized to look like a Romulan ear, but it's over top of her cloaked Romulan ear. So it's like actually
Mhm.
over top of her Romulan ear because she's a Romulan. So I guess she is an ancestor that looks exactly like a descendant.
How convenient.
Yeah, strong genes in the Talon slash Laris family, just like the Sungs. Maybe not
Mm.
just like the Sungs, given uh, our theories about that family, but I don't know. Anyway, so that's a little bit of a something new we've learned. That's one question that's been kind of going through this season that we have a possible answer to anyway. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, so that was interesting. Um, what did you think of this whole deep dive into sober Picard's mind? As we say, she doesn't want to see what 5-drink Picard's brain looks like, but this is sober Picard, and she's like, okay. Um, yeah, some interesting things going on. Kind of like the two levels of it I thought were interesting, that Picard's kind of in this um therapy session or psychological analysis, I guess, level, and then underneath that or above that, I don't know, is the story that he's telling that Talin finds herself in when she goes into his mind. That was interesting to me.
Yeah, I found some of it tedious. Because I'm like, I've seen this. Show me something new. Give me
Hmm.
some context. And so I felt it went on just a little bit too long. However, I loved the whole psychological session with not Dr. Bashir. I will admit that Alexander Siddig and James Callis do share some characteristics that might mistake one for the other.
Hmm.
And I'm at the very beginning, I'm like, is that wait, wait, is that no? Voice is wrong. Voice is wrong. Face is similar. Voice is wrong.
Yeah.
Is it? No. Is it what? And so I'm just watching the credits. Oh, yeah, it is James Callis. Okay, okay. Who
Hmm.
I love, by the way.
Yes.
Love him. Loved him in Battlestar Galactica. But also just love him in anything. I think he's a way better actor than he's given credit for. I think he needs to be in everything. I love that he's in Star Trek now, so that makes me happy.
Yes.
One
Star Trek claims
one
another
thing
one.
yeah, one thing that annoys me, and this is just so nitpicky, and most people probably didn't notice it. Throughout most of the scene, um, the psychologist's hair is flipped upward in the back. But
Hmm.
later, when he's standing up and walking around at the end of the scene, it's curled under. So I'm like, was there a
No.
glitch in this hologram that suddenly his hair changed? Because, bugged me.
Yeah. It's one of those ones that you Star Trek has a long tradition of doing episodes that take place in one's mind, which if anybody's read the old Nitpickers Guides by Phil
Mm,
Farrand, where he talks about it's like
I
you can explain away any mistake in any of those with it all happened in their minds. So I like that. Like everything from the uniform he was wearing being kind of a mashup between a couple different styles. Like I don't think we need
mhm,
to say that this was an actual style of uniform that goes in between this one and this one. It's all
yeah,
Picard's mind, you know. It's and there's kind of this weird dreamlike quality to it already. Like later in the session, he calls where he was his ready room. Picard says that is unlike any ready room he had on the Enterprise D or the Enterprise E, but it had a bunch of objects in it from both of those ready rooms. And so there's
mhm,
like I've had dreams like that where like, oh, I was in my old family house, but like if you really think of the details, it was like it was, but it wasn't. Um, I kind of liked that because they got away with doing like a smaller set and not having to make it exactly like that. But I was like, okay, it's got this dreamlike quality. Now, obviously, James Callis's hair, they probably just filmed that on 2 different days.
Yeah, but
But
you would think that somebody would look at the actual stuff that they did film and, oh, I don't know, try to match it.
that's
But
the continuity person's job, but they slipped up, I guess.
it's fine. It's honestly fine. Here's how I'm writing it off in my mind. As Picard realizes who this psychologist actually is, that's when his appearance changes slightly and becomes that of his actual father,
Hmm.
which I'm that's how I'm headcanoning that in.
Yeah.
So, and that's
Yeah. All
that's
right.
just where I sit on that, but it still bothers me.
Yeah.
Still bothers me because I'm like, guys, you should know better by now.
Yeah.
We're gonna find those mistakes.
What really bugs me, and I'm not saying this happened in this episode because I it usually jumps out at me now. I have a friend that's big into video production, and I've helped him out quite a bit. So I started to learn a lot of editing and all that kind of stuff. And you start noticing it so much where the angle on the scene or the different shot, the shot changes. And like in one scene, like the person's putting on their glasses and it switches shots and they're putting on their glasses again or something like that. Or
Mhm.
someone's facing this way and suddenly they're facing that way, or their hands up and their hands down. It just jumps out at me now, and I wish I could unsee those things because I used to
Same.
enjoy things so much more
Oh,
before I
no, I
noticed
totally
those.
get it. I totally get it. There's a scene in White Christmas where, we first see the sisters and the Haynes sisters, and they're in their dressing room, and they're having this conversation, and there's a wider shot that's pulled back where the younger sister is pouring coffee into 2 mugs. She's barely pouring any coffee in there. I mean, it's and then the next scene, you see her pouring the coffee again, except she doesn't actually pour anything out of it. It's
Yep.
like, ah. But and once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it ever again, and now it's just, oh, there it is. I
Hmm.
didn't see it for many years, and then it was, like, last year that I finally noticed that, and I'm like, "Oh, crap. Now I'm gonna always see it. I can't unsee it. Stupid brain, remember everything." So, yeah, yeah.
Well, here's a good way to ruin just about any television show or film. So, hey, here's a gift for everyone out there.
Mhm.
Um, unless the director is and the editors are the most like, meticulous and really just care about every little thing, any scene where there's a glass in which you can see the level of liquid in it, or a character smoking a cigarette, as the shots change, you will see those levels go up and down, and that cigarette will change various lengths throughout the whole thing. Because that is something that's just a pain in the butt to get right, unless you're using a fake cigarette, which I think a lot of things do now,
Yes.
or the character just never touches the liquid, which in and of itself always takes you out of the reality of the scene as well. So, yeah, there you go. I've ruined just about every drinking scene in any show or movie for everyone. So, anyway.
Yes. Well, and that's why I could never be a good director or editor because I would wanna fix all that. I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
"No, not in my film. Mm-mm, no,
Yeah.
no. This continuity is gonna be impeccable." And then, the producers would be like, "Why did you waste $1,000,000 refilming this scene?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, James Callis. I do want to talk about him as well because you've commented, but I haven't really said anything. And he was someone that like I remembered reading somewhere or hearing somewhere there was a rumor he was going to show up at some point, but I'd kind of forgotten. And then he shows up here, and Nikki and I both immediately we just watched through all of Battlestar Galactica a couple of years ago, I guess, and we both were just like, oh, like it was like Baltar is on screen here. No more Mr. Nice Guyus right there on
Mm.
screen, right? One of my favorite lines from all of Battlestar Galactica, by the way.
Oh, I'd forgotten that. Thank you. Thank you.
But he's got one line here too that I'm like, that's got to be a reference where he says something about a weakness of the human model or something like that, and I was like,
Mm,
you sneaky
yeah.
devils.
Except in this
Yeah,
case, they're talking about, the human that this psychology program was based on.
yeah, exactly. But I was
But
like,
still, wink, wink, wink.
I liked it. I liked it.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so great that he's in Star Trek. That's exciting. I love that. And I do have to say, I watched this with the closed captioning, and it did
Mhm.
ruin something
Mm,
because the convention for closed captioning is when a character is speaking who's not currently on screen, they have the name of the character before the dialogue, and
mhm.
it immediately said Maurice, and I was like, Maurice, I know that name. That's Picard's dad's name. Is there any other Maurice? So the whole episode I'm like, is this his father somehow? And sure enough it was, which didn't ruin the episode or anything like that, but that reveal was not as impactful as I think it could have been, even though if you're listening for the themes and stuff, you've kind of worked it out by then anyway. But just that it was like immediately just flashed up on screen before he'd even really said any dialogue, that I'm like already thinking like, that's Picard's father's name. Uh, that was a little, darn it. I wish I hadn't turned those on, but that's okay.
Yeah, see, that didn't happen in my subtitles. So,
Mm. And that's another thing, is we've talked about that too, is Crave
yeah.
does their own subtitles versus Paramount Plus and versus probably Amazon overseas and stuff. So that's weird. If they don't want
Mm.
that stuff revealed, why aren't they like including subtitles with I don't know. I don't know how that all works. I don't work behind the scenes on streaming services, but it seems like you could really like make that uniform. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that if you are producing something that is going to be shown with closed captions at any point, that the studio themselves should have that already done
Yeah.
for the different languages, and that it should just be a standard across the board and done by the people who actually made the show, rather than having these third party companies come in and this is how it is for streaming on this place, this is how it is in this country, even though we all speak English in the in Canada and the United States. uh the subtitles shouldn't be different, but they are, and it's just I agree, it should be a uniform thing, and I think it should come directly from the source. That's just
Mhm.
my personal opinion. I'm sure there are a lot of reasons why they don't do that. It probably has something to do with money. Anyway,
Yeah, it makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. We'll come back to I think Picard's story as it kind of wraps up, but yeah, we learn a lot about what's going on, obviously, and that sort of thing. Um, I actually let's just focus on that, and then we'll talk about the other stories. So,
sure.
uh, yeah, we learn more about Picard's mother, and that she suffered from a mental illness of some sort, and the perceived what young Picard perceived was happening wasn't the whole story, basically.
No.
Um, which is a common thing, right? Like that's a very common theme and a common thing in real life. Recontextualizing those memories once you have the full information as an adult, right? You see things from that perspective. Which I have mixed feelings about. I've seen mixed feelings online about. On one hand, I'm glad for the rehabilitation of the Maurice Picard character, in that um, I'm glad it turns out that he's not as abusive as it was implied that he might have been. I still think emotional abuse is a thing, and he emotionally abused Picard. That's kind of Jean-Luc Picard. That's kind of been an obvious thing even from TNG, the way he's talked about his father and his relationship with his father and that sort of thing. I'm glad that he turns out not to have been a physical abuser or something like that. So yeah, I have mixed feelings with where the story goes, but I'm curious your thoughts on this, and folks in the comments as well.
Yeah. Well, with the way that he described her illness, his father, the way that Maury, is that right?
Maurice, yeah.
Maurice, the way that he described her, you know, her problem, it sounds like bipolar disorder to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's that mania end of the spectrum and the depression end of the spectrum, and there's very rarely anything in between.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have these really awful, depressing, can't get out of bed, don't want to do anything or see anyone sort of times. And then you'll have these episodes of mania that are, I mean, it's what it sounds like. Think about what you think mania to be. And that's pretty much what it does what it says on the tin.
Right.
And so, when she's wanting to, she's like, we have to get out of here. We have to get out of here. She's having a manic episode.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happening. And the thing is that the depression is easier to handle in other ways, because with mania, you make bad decisions. You make really bad decisions and you don't even remember doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely sounds like that to me. And being a person who has bipolar disorder, I could identify with a lot of her behavior before I was diagnosed and started being treated for bipolar disorder. So there was a lot of that. I kind of already felt that the dad really wasn't the villain he was being made out to be.
Yeah.
So that didn't surprise me a whole lot. But the way that Picard is remembering this, the way that this dream is playing out in his head, is that's very indicative of memory in general. What actually happened is rarely what we remember happening.
Mm-hmm. To
Our
an alarming
minds,
degree in a
yeah,
lot of cases.
to an alarming degree. Things that I'm just like, well, I was just recently having a talk with my little sister. If my mom's watching, she may or may not find this amusing. When my sister Brooke was about 6 years old, that's the way I remember it. She might have been slightly older, but I think she was about 6 years old. She was staying with our grandmother, my mother's mother, and she had promised to take Brooke to the store. And she said, "No, I'm too busy later." And Brooke was not happy about that. And she decided she was going to the store on her own. And this is in a city. This is in Salt Lake City, big city. This is the, late 70s, early 80s. And a small child, left my grandma's apartment building, walked 2.5 blocks to the store, and came back with not being kidnapped, not a scratch on her, except for some the shoes that she was wearing was sort of a sandal with a back strap across the back ankle and heel, and she had some blisters from that.
Mm.
But the fact that she did not get kidnapped, etc. But see, what I remember about that was this all happened before my mother found out about it. My grandmother called my mother, said she was missing. My mom is like, "Okay, we have to go to your grandma's." And I'm in the middle of watching Buck Rogers, and I'm like, "No, I don't care what she did. I want to watch my show." And so I was so angry at Brooke for messing up my evening that I never even found out the entire story. And so I asked her perception of it and what she remembered. And she said, "I don't even remember what I wanted at the store. Obviously, I had no money and I didn't come home with it." And she said, "Yeah, when I got back and I saw a bunch of people out there and mom and grandma looking really mad, I just kind of hid in the bushes and thought, I am going to be in so much trouble."
Oh.
And she was 6.
Mhm.
You know, she had no idea that she was causing this kind of panic. And the way that she remembers it is that she was made to feel horrible about it for a long time after this
Oh,
happened.
wow. Yeah.
So, you know, our perception of events is flawed. And my
Mhm.
perception of that event is completely different than her perception of the event. And, you know, just it's just a story about how our memories are not flawless and we remember things differently than they actually happened most of
Yeah,
the time.
and, like, in this case too, the fact that, like, obviously those physical monsters weren't there, and those
Yeah.
aren't even, like, his mother's imaginings, those are
Mm-mm.
young Jean-Luc's imaginings. So, like,
Mm,
his brain is interpreting his mother's actions as her being threatened by these monsters, and they manifest for him. Like, the malleability of a young mind and what it remembers and what his mind probably by this point truly believes he saw, whether, if he actually consciously examined that memory, he'd be like, well, that's obviously not what happened, but that's in his mind, that's what he kind of remembers, right? And
yeah.
that's terrifying, and ugh, it's
Yeah.
made from whole cloth from his mind, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
Scary, scary stuff. Oh, great title for the episode, by the way.
Yeah, it's that. And see, the thing is that we get contacts. I've had trouble saying words today. Context, not contacts.
Mhm,
We get context for some of that later. Because when someone is in a fit of mania, they are a danger to themselves and others,
mhm,
especially with as severe as her particular episode seemed to be from what we saw. Um, and the thing is that they have said in the episode is that she refused treatment.
mhm,
So I don't know what kind of treatment would have been available in this time period for her. The treatment now, you know, it's difficult. It's like people we don't we tend not to understand or try to understand people with neurodivergent brains and instead just seek to fix them.
mhm.
So, but again, speaking as someone who has bipolar disorder, I would prefer to stay on my medication, thank you very much, because it keeps me from, staying in bed for the rest
Mm.
of my life because I don't wanna get out of it, or, having a fit of mania and reorganizing all of the closets, but only halfway, and then leaving a complete and total mess behind because I get bored and move on to something else. Yeah, I don't want either of those things.
Yeah, I feel like I do that. I don't think it's related to anything I find. That's just my own. Oh, that's just me. Yeah. One other thing I want to talk about with regards to this storyline is just Orla Brady as Tallinn navigating all of this. I really appreciated her character in this because there's kind of the one snarky comment she makes, not even snarky, but it's what I've referenced in
Mm,
my name here, where she says, oh, this is sober Picard's mind. What's 5 drink Picard's mind like? But that's really it. Like, she's not like, whoa, this is weird, this is crazy. She's just like, okay, let's cut through this, let's see what needs to be done, let's figure this out. Oh, here's a little boy, I'm going to help him. And I really appreciated her presence in this as kind of a guide through it. I thought that was a
mm.
really, I don't know, in a way I wasn't expecting. She was just such a calming presence throughout all this, and she doesn't do much beyond that, but it's enough. Like, I really liked it, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
well, Talon is a badass,
Hmm.
and, I will fight anyone who says otherwise, but, and that's the thing. She is by nature and by profession a protector. And so
Hmm.
what is she gonna do? She gonna protect. That's how Talon goes.
Makes
So
sense.
but I do like that she basically her entire demeanor throughout this is wariness. She's completely wary of everything that's going on. She is ready for anything that might happen. And if she has to bring out her big badass stick, whatever that form takes, then she will. So it was interesting watching
Mhm.
her, especially interacting with young Picard as well. That protective nature really came out, but she was still all, she wasn't exactly a motherly figure. She was definitely like, I am going to keep you safe, whatever
Mhm.
it takes.
Yeah,
So determined.
absolutely.
That's the word I'm looking for. Determined. Wary
What
and determined.
Yeah, and strong, and just like, I don't know, like when she's walking young Picard through it, she would have been totally at home with like a sword and a shield in front. Like, I just like
Absolutely.
such a great protective presence there. Um, the last thing, and I just remembered that I had this thought watching this episode. James Callis as Maurice, but as the psychologist early in the first part. Uh, this is very niche for people who have read the post finale Voyager novels. There's a character in the post finale novels that goes on, Counselor Hugh Cambridge, and reading things that the authors have written and stuff, or Kirsten Beyer, I guess she solely was responsible kind of for those stories. He was based on kind of a version of Dr. House from the television show House. So a lot of people put Hugh Laurie in his position because basically he's like a British House, which Hugh Laurie could also obviously play.
Yeah.
Um, in my mind, for whatever reason, every time I read those novels, I pictured James Callis. Like, I just, for whatever reason.
Really?
Yeah. And it's
Love it.
so weird seeing a psychologist in Star Trek played by James Callis with that kind of snarky attitude as well. Like, when he's like, well, I'm supposed to be here for an hour. So what do you want to do? Like, that's kind of how Cambridge was a little bit as well. Maybe
Mm.
gruffer than that, but there was still, so I was like, this is so weird and it works perfectly. So that was my own little, that's really weird. But anyway, yeah.
Hmm. Interesting.
So now
Very
I'm
interesting.
like totally justified in picturing James Callis, because like now I've got exactly what that would look like. So yeah.
Precognition. Kind of crazy.
Kind of
No.
weird. Okay. Let's talk about, let's do Girardi and the Borg Queen, because their part in this story is pretty small, but
It's
memorable.
this big. This
Yeah,
big.
it's very tiny, but memorable, for a couple reasons that are not exactly in universe in the story. There's one
Hmm.
appearance by somebody that I think we should talk about, but
Hmm.
um, the one thing I will say is Seven and Raffi following Girardi and trying to track her down. That conversation they have on La Serena before they head out, where like they've learned that Agnes has kissed Rios before they realize how taken over by the Borg Queen she is. But they're like, well, if that's all happening again, I quit the gang. I'm out. and
Yeah, if
then
that starts up again, I'm leaving the gang.
and then
I
Seven,
cannot.
yeah, exactly. And Seven just looks at her and she's like, what? Oh, you're talking about me and you? That's like the main story. This is a sideshow.
Yeah.
That
Our
whole
pain
meta
is deep and
conversation.
beautiful, and everyone wants to hear about it.
I loved that so much. I was laughing my butt off. That was great.
Mhm. Yes.
Patrick's gotten ahead of us. We'll get there, Patrick.
Thanks,
We'll get
Patrick,
there.
for ruining it for the chat.
Yeah, so they see on the security monitor, I guess, what happened with Girardi, and they realize, the Borg Queen is loose in 21st century Los Angeles. You want to talk about butterflies? Ugh. Yeah, that's not so good. So I love that Seven is on the case because, like, Seven and the Borg Queen, like, come on, right?
Mhm.
Why isn't that? Yeah. So I love that she's on the trail here and kind of realizing what the Queen is doing to try and assert greater control, because they witness what exactly happened at this bar or this nightclub, I guess, where she smashes the window and it's like, what the heck's that about? Oh, it's to generate these endorphins to further assert control. Now, Patrick, yes, that was Patrick Stewart's wife, Sunny Ozell, singing at the club, which, and I don't mean this in a cynical way or anything like that, but when you're the main star of a show and one of the producers, you can get your wife a job. Not to say it
Yeah.
wasn't deserved, because she's an incredible singer, and it was a neat little thing for us fans who recognize her to see that. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, the first time through and I'm like, "I know her. Where do I know her?" And then I forgot about it until we rewatched it on the day that it dropped for everybody else. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's Patrick Stewart's wife, Sunny.
Mm-hmm.
Sunny Ozell, is that right? Ozell? Chat,
Yep.
help me out. Oh, yep, yep,
Sunny
yep.
Ozell.
Danny
Yep.
Pearson said it. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. The first place I ever saw her, if anyone has seen the video that Patrick Stewart made, the Patrick Stewart sings the country classics or something like that. That was the first time I'd ever seen Sunny Ozell, or her, and heard her sing. If you've not seen that, you need to look that up.
It's
That is,
amazing.
yeah.
It will make your
Jace,
day.
is it P Stew? P Stew sings. That's how they put it. Yeah, P Stew
Mhm.
sings the country classics or something like that. It's incredible. You will, if you've not seen it before, you will not believe your eyes and ears. It's
It's amazing.
terrific. It is,
It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
So
Any
it's good.
superlative we give it is fully earned, I promise.
Yes. This is true.
um, yeah. So yeah, I guess not much more to talk about this story, because that's kind of where it's left. We get that one thing that, like, okay, to be continued. We're chasing her, which I'm assuming will be kind of a main plot point in the next episode, because you don't want to let that one sit for too long. You need to address this pretty fast, I think. Although there
Yeah.
are other plot points to address quickly as well by the end of this episode. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else we want to say about that?
No, I don't think so, but I think it's, if I remember right, we went a long time without seeing what was going on with the Borg Queen and Agnes,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like this is one of the reasons why I feel like there are too many cooks in the kitchen, too many things
Mm-hmm.
going on. What and again, where the hell is Robert in all of these flashbacks? And also, what does this have to do with anything that Q is trying to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was kind of surprised that they kind of link it to Q at the end. They start talking about, what does Q want Picard to understand about his past, and I was like, I didn't assume that Q was behind that, but the characters seem to, which I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, okay. And I mean, if they put that in the script, obviously I don't think Q's going to show up and say, like, what are you talking about? That has nothing to do with me. So I think he does have something to do with it, but it was weird that I didn't make that connection at all in the episode.
yeah, but it's just okay, so know thyself. That's what Q wants, is Picard to know himself. Why? What does that have to do with this future that Q created? What does this have to do with going back in time? What does this have to do with anything?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to know. That's what I'm not getting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. Sorry. I'm just, Wellington's comment. A Borg. Oh, sorry. I guess that would be bonus instead of bones. I don't know. I figured we all needed a laugh there. Thank you for that. That was excellent.
Okay, I gotta breathe.
Now, forgive me if I'm wrong. Robert does get a mention at one point by Picard's mom, where she says something about your father and your brother off doing something or something like that, right? I don't even know if that's in this episode, but I remember, like, I don't know, there was like a name drop or something. I don't know if that was to,
maybe so.
you know.
I just find it weird, but that's just me.
Mhm.
And if they, I'm willing to. I've seen in the chat people are saying that he was at boarding school. I'm willing to accept that. They could have at least, actually said that at some point, maybe. But
I just realized him and Cybok are off hanging out. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So a few people have, So yeah, in episode 1, she says Robert's at school. TJ says the same. Okay. All
Okay,
right.
well, I don't remember that at all.
No.
So I
Probably.
apologize.
Oh yeah, he's got a brother. He's at school, which is fine. That's fine.
It's fine. It's
Um.
fine.
Okay. What else? Oh yeah. So let's talk briefly about. I guess not so briefly, because I've got some things to say about what happens towards the end of the episode with them.
Yeah, me too.
But Rios and Teresa, which, by the way, I think this was revealed in an earlier episode, but we never commented on it. And it's like, I can't decide if it's too on the nose or not. But the fact that her clinic is called the Clínica Las Mariposas, which is Spanish for butterfly. Like, is that too on the nose? Like, avoid
Yes.
butterflies? Okay. All right. I just wanted to check because I think it might be.
Yeah, it is. It is.
All right. Fair enough. Yeah, so Rios and Teresa and her kid, who I'm starting to like more and more, actually. I really like
Yeah,
the kid.
I'm liking him less and less.
Okay, fair enough.
That's okay though. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're getting a little closer, or Rios is trying to, and Teresa's like between thinking he's walking towards her like a serial killer and all this kind of stuff. And given 25th century doodads to wave over patients, which I'm like,
Okay. Again, why does he give that thing to her?
I don't know. That was the one part that, out of everything in this episode, actually, that was the one part I was like, that makes no sense.
It makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
here's
this 25th century thing that you have no idea what it does or how to work it, but here, you take care of this. What?
Mm-hmm. No. You do it.
Just her being a doctor does not qualify her to use 20th century technology.
No. Yeah, that seemed really odd to me. I didn't really understand that scene.
It makes no sense.
I didn't get that. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Just
okay. Let's go to the elephant in the room. Why? Why does he bring her to the ship? What is?
Are you kidding me?
Now,
the hell, Rios? How many times do you have to be told? How many times?
What really bugged me about that was he's a captain in Starfleet.
Of the starship. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. What happened there? Because he is not in any way acting like a captain.
Yeah, and this hey, that might explain it. Thank you. But like, this wasn't a Gillian Taylor situation where there's like,
Mm-mm.
oh crap, she's found the cloaked ship, there's no other choice. This is a, you can still explain things away or not and have her hate you, which is a fine price to pay for maintaining the temporal prime directive. What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing? Like, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to get close to this woman who you shouldn't anyway. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But like, if she thinks you're weird and steers clear of you, like, yeah, she's seen some stuff and stuff that's hard to explain, but they already like erased a cop's memory once. Like, they could just do it
Mm-hmm.
again without all of this. I don't. I'm just seeing comments like, even
Yeah.
Janeway wouldn't be this irresponsible though. Like,
Yeah.
no, this was really weird. Now, whether or not you agree, we did get the line that I'm gonna go touch everything, which I loved. I'm with Patrick on that one. Um, I thought
If
that
we
was the
were that
perfect
kid,
line.
every one of us, yeah, if we were that kid, we would all be doing that. We would all be doing
Absolutely,
that.
but he
And
should
yet
not
we
be there.
and no, he should absolutely not be there. And the whole, yet another reference to Star Trek 4 with the, "No, I'm from Chile. I work in outer space." I'm like,
I actually, I know, fan service, blah blah blah. I actually really liked that line. Not even so much for the reference, but I was struggling, and I mean, you didn't have to do it with this line, but I thought it was funny and it worked with Rios. But the reason I really loved it was after that line, I started to think, what other things has Star Trek done to reference South America other than Hoshi teaching in Brazil for a semester or
mm,
something like that? And I was like, I love that he's from Chile. And I have a Chilean friend that I'm like, she doesn't watch Star Trek, but I want her to watch this show now
mm,
because, like, hey, that's so cool. When is that ever referenced in Star Trek? I thought that was cool. But
yeah.
that's kind of separate from the line, which I know some people have a problem with. I loved it. I know it's dumb, but I loved it.
It's just so much. It's every single episode. Fan service, remember this?
Mhm.
And I'm just tired of it. Just tell me a coherent story, which you are not doing.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I actually, punk rock zoologist puts it. That's kind of where I'm at. Like, I'm like, I loved the line. I almost hate myself for loving it, but I loved it.
I did.
But yeah, I also kind of hope that's the last of it, but I also know that it won't be. But
Mm-mm.
I
Mm-mm.
really kind of hope it is. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's enough about that part of the story because
It's enraging. Just
I
seriously, when we watched it the first time, Dave and I are going, "What are you doing?"
yeah, I don't get it. I just don't. I don't think it was oh yeah, the rubber tree people of South America. Yep. Yep. Good call. Good call. Yep. Missed that
Whatever.
one. Um yeah. Yeah, I just don't understand. I was like, we weren't there yet. Anyway, okay. So let's talk about the kind of second half of the Picard part of this story.
Mhm.
Because they decide they need to get in touch with Q. Um, there's this whole thing. There's parts I love, and there's parts that I'm very confused about.
Mhm.
So Picard goes to Guinan because he knows there's history between the Elorians and the Q, which I love the exploration of that because in Q Who, we see Q is kind of afraid of Guinan. We still don't know what that's about. I love the idea that like they fought a cold war. They had a cold war, and people are like, well, how could you have a cold war against someone like the Q who can do anything? Well, we saw Q was afraid of Guinan, at least on some level. So there's a lot about the Elorians we don't know. I think that's really neat that, what did Q called her? She's an imp, right? So like, what's that all about? Using the bottle that they struck peace over to summon the Q, like that in and of itself is kind of weird already, but like, how does she have that bottle there with her on Earth?
Maybe she was there. I don't know.
I guess, but
no.
boy,
It
is
makes
that
no
lucky.
Yeah, there's just so many plot conveniences that I am having a really hard time with, and this was yet another one. So I'm just like, really? Really? This
Yeah.
is what we're doing? And I comfort myself by just watching her performance. And Dave and I, when we watched it again on Thursday when it dropped for everybody, we were just really carefully watching her, listening to how she said the words, listening to watching the movements that she made. And I don't know if you guys understand how brilliant she is,
She's very,
because
very good.
she is evoking Whoopi Goldberg in her performance without outright copying it.
Yeah.
It's stunning, frankly.
Yeah, I agree completely because she's not being Whoopi Goldberg's Guinan. She's channeling her, but like in a very different way, but I love it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's a good way to put it.
And I want to say I have no problem with the broad strokes. Like I love the idea that if an Elorian summons a Q appears. That's a cool idea. I think that's neat. It's the specifics that I'm like, okay, so they use this bottle but that's the bottle that they made peace over? Like, how does she have that? That doesn't make, I don't know. It's like the details are weird to me, but the broad strokes I'm digging. Yeah. Now, I did have a funny thought because we've seen that Q's powers are at least diminished, if not non-existent right now. So I love the idea that like she does this thing and it's supposed to summon a Q, and like Q's on the other side of LA or something. And he's like, I gotta, crap. So he's like getting on a bus right now. Like, I gotta do this. He's just trying to make his way there.
There's something I want to say and I can't.
Okay, all right. Well, that was what went through my head. Was like Nikki and I were both thinking, well, he doesn't have his powers. He's probably stuck in traffic.
That's basically the process that went on in my head as well. It's like, well, wherever he is, he's got a long trek ahead of him. Time to beat it, Q. Slap that payment. Get on out there. You have been summoned.
So someone does show up shortly after this, but it's not Q. It is a gentleman being played by Jay Carnes. That's his name. Thank you. Jay Carnes shows up as an FBI agent, I think. But this was one where I was like, this guy looks really familiar. And then I remembered, of course, he was in the trailers as well. And then it came back to me that whole link there. And I looked it up. I was like, okay, yeah, it's the same actor who played Lieutenant Duquesne of the 29th Century Starfleet in the Voyager episode Relativity. And he's a time cop, right? Like that's his job, is to maintain the timelines and stuff.
Time cop.
So if they've cast this guy in this role in this particular story, he better darn well be Duquesne, because like, why would you cast him otherwise? Now they've made his hair up to look exactly like the style that he wore as the other character in Voyager. And the biggest thing for me is his character's name is Agent Martin Wells. So like the Relativity was a Wells class starship, H.G. Wells, time travel, and for crying out loud, his first name is Marty. He's a time traveler, people. He's a time traveler. Right? Like it's got to be him. Right?
I can neither confirm nor deny because I know the answer to your question.
Yes. Okay. Oh, I sure as heck hope he is, because if not, I'm like, anyway. Do you like the actor? Interestingly.
Well, I like the actor, but again, this whole thing is, what does this have to do with anything?
Well, that I don't mind, at least as far as this episode goes, because it's like, okay, he shows up and that's kind of where it's left. So it's like, okay, hopefully we'll get those answers. But for me, I'm like, how do I put it? I can't, the sentence I was forming has fled my brain. But yeah, I'm really curious how this all fits in. So I like the actor, and he has a lot more to do here as this guy than he did as Duquesne. He seemed very kind of straight and narrow, just kind of typical Starfleet officer guy. But the interesting thing about the 29th century Starfleet is Christopher L. Bennett's take on them in his Department of Temporal Investigations novels, which paints them as a lot darker than we saw in the Voyager episode, because in that episode, he arrests his captain for crimes that he's going to do in the future timeline. And it's kind of played for laughs and stuff because they caught him and they're going to reintegrate him before the trial with his future self. And I didn't really think about it at the time because it's just a really throwaway line, but that is a totalitarian society that, Minority Report type stuff that's like for crimes you're gonna do, even though they have the other him in custody at the time, so they're going to arrest him so that never happens. But that's pretty dark. So it'd be interesting if he is this character, which is still an if, I think, at this point, how they'll portray that future Starfleet. So anyway, again, that's a big if.
The same theme is happening in this season of Moon Knight as well.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I didn't even make that connection, but I am watching that as well. But yeah, the one god who Amit, yeah, takes the totality of your life and weighs the good versus the bad, and whether or not you've done the good or bad yet, kills you based on that or lets you live. So interesting. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're left with this episode is the FBI bust in and led by this Agent Wells. Come on. Marty Wells. Come on. Sorry.
That's so ridiculously on the nose. It's just it's like, what are you trying to do here? What are you trying to do?
That one I don't mind so much because it like, I don't know. It also just sounds like it's a typical name, unless you're like looking, I don't know. Yeah, probably a little too on the nose, but I appreciated it because if it does lead to something, if it doesn't lead to anything, I'm gonna be mad. I'm just saying. But
I can neither confirm nor deny whether you'll be mad.
I know. But yeah, that's kind of where we're left. I guess Picard throws his comm badge down like it's a how did they put it in Trek culture? Like he's stashing drugs during a bust or something like that. But they're gonna find that. Nice try, but yeah.
Again, I can neither confirm nor deny whether they find the comm badge.
Fair enough. I'm not asking. Yeah, I guess any thoughts on all of that? Without, of course, talking about what happens afterwards.
Well, I think I've said everything I'm going to say about that scene, and the things that I liked and the things that I absolutely did not.
Fair enough.
And yeah, when this guy came in, and I'm like, okay, well, they're getting arrested. So I was not surprised at anything that happened after that. So yeah, I was just, and I knew that at the first time we watched it that was going to be the end of the episode, and basically my reaction
Mhm.
was, oh.
I'm getting used to that. I have to say I'm getting good at predicting when the end's gonna come, which is kind of letting me like I can just make peace with it. I'm okay.
Yeah,
Still not my
Dave nails it
favorite
every
way of
time. Yeah,
telling the story, but I'm okay
yeah.
with it.
Dave nails it every time, because I'll be like, okay, and like because I've seen through episode 9, and
Mhm.
so when we, and I think it was during episode 9 where I'm like, okay, and credits, and Dave's like, no. And he's like, and now credits. And he was right. He's right every time.
Nice. Yeah. I'm just on the, yeah, of course, it's not Insider, so of course they're not going to have any extra information. But I was just on the Memory Alpha page for Duquesne. Yeah, no. Anyway. Yeah, so final thoughts and ratings for Monsters, both to you, Brandi, and to the fine folks in the comments, whose comments I haven't been featuring as much this time around. So my apologies to that. Brandi and I kind of really got into the discussion on this one.
We did. We were focused like we've never been focused before, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts or
Um, this is a convoluted episode.
yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
There's like the two. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Well, there's so many different things going on, and I kind of just rolled my eyes at the Romulan ear-shaped monitor thing, and just like, well, obviously she's Romulan. It also reminded me of oh my gosh, I can remember his first name, Samanthan. His
Rutherford's.
implant. Thank
Yeah.
you, Rutherford. I don't, it was just 404 file not found, as per usual. Reminded me of that a little bit, even though that one was supposed to have been a Vulcaneer. This was just a weird episode. I'm like, I spent most of it going, what are you trying to say here? What are you trying to say? I mean,
Mhm.
the Picard stuff, yeah, I understand. And this is the theory that I posited to Dave after we saw this episode. So this, and there are no spoilers. I mean, I can't say whether, I mean, at the time I hadn't seen any further episodes. So, but my thought was, okay, so he's got this shame that he hasn't really faced yet. So, because we see her in the room with the white door begging to be let out, we see him taking a key, we see him putting it in the lock, and
Mhm.
then, Talon's being pulled out, he's waking up, etc. And I'm like, okay, so he unlocks the door, and she, you know, runs back into the labyrinth, can't find her way out, and dies down there when it gets flooded from the rains.
Mhm.
And so
That's my
basically
assumption.
it's his fault that she dies. That
Mhm.
is my going theory as I said it after I saw this episode for the first time, not having seen any future episodes. So I am not saying that this is reflective of any events yet to come. That was just my theory at that time. So I will give this rating a what the hell are you doing, Rios?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm I'm going to agree with Wellington's comment, which was he gave it a middling rating, but said that the good was really good. That's kind of how I feel about this.
Mhm.
There's parts in this episode that have me really scratching my head and going like, I don't understand the motivation behind doing that. The big one being Rios and and the doctor and her kid, right? Like I don't get it. But the good parts of this episode, which are, I think, the whole thing in Picard's mind and all of that, even though it requires a big, huge pause button on all of the rest of the story, which
Mhm.
that's an issue as well, I think. Um, it's really good. It's like Nepenthe was in season 1, and I know I'm stealing this from Sean Ferrick because he brought up the same thing, which was like that was a really great episode when we're on Nepenthe with with Riker and Troy, but it requires a big pause button on pretty much everything else that's going on, kind of thing. And yeah, I feel the same way with this episode. I really enjoyed that Picard stuff. The movement we get on the other parts of the story is questionable to me. Again, the broad strokes, I don't, and this applies to the Rios thing as well. I think that's an interesting story, bringing that character to the ship, if what had led up to that justified that happening. Like
Mhm.
the moment in Star Trek 4 when Kirk beams Taylor onto the bird of prey and says, "Hello, Alice, welcome to Wonderland." That's a great moment, and it's earned. Like, it's everything
Mhm.
up to that moment is like, well, this is the last thing we can possibly do at this moment. Our cover's blown, and she's here. We didn't get that with this. I like the idea of bringing these people who I really like and want to see more story with, especially Teresa, into the story. I really like that she's a part of the story. I don't like that she seems to have been like wedged in there because they want her there. Like, give me more reason for that to happen. I love that it
Yeah.
happens, generally speaking. I don't love how it happened because it makes no sense. Same with the Guinan and Q stuff. I love that we're getting exploration of that. I love the broad strokes. I love the idea that, hey, there's way more to these Elorians that you even know, and the fact that they could be a credible threat to the Q so much that they had a cold war between the two of them. That's wonderful. And we didn't mention, but we get the little repeat of the Guinan thing. That's so great.
Yeah.
Um, but the specifics, the details of it are just, they don't ring true to me. They seem strange. And I mean, maybe that's me as my little mortal sitting on this planet with no knowledge of the workings of gods or whatever, but it's still, it seemed weak that she had the bottle there and it does the thing. Like, some way to summon a Q, sure, that's awesome, but that was weird. So I'm all over the place on this episode and I have no idea what to rate it. I'm probably going to give it a 2.5 out of 5, right down the middle, because the really good stuff is counterbalanced by some stuff that I really don't like. And you guys watching, you folks watching, I should say, y'all know how much I love Star Trek and how much I hate to say that Star Trek isn't living up to my love of it. And again, the good parts of this episode are way up there with the things that I love about Star Trek, but the couple failings in this episode really drag it down for me. So I, I hate when I feel like that about Star Trek. So
I
I'm
do too. I
all over
hate
the
it
place.
too, and I felt that a lot this season, and I didn't want to, and this is what I feel is happening here is that we've got characters serving the plot instead of the plot serving the characters. And the
Yeah,
difference
exactly.
is that, the Rios that we know, he never would have taken them onto that ship. That's the
Hmm.
Rios we know. But because they needed to get them onto the ship, they're having Rios act out of character.
Yeah.
And these are the things that I don't like about it. It's like you are forcing these characters to do things that do not make sense so that you can have your story turn out the way you want it. That isn't how storytelling works.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like there's a universe and there's a sequence of events that leads to that, where Rios would make that decision. This ain't it. Like, this ain't it. Sorry.
They didn't earn it. They didn't earn
No,
it. You've got to earn that sort of stuff. You've got to earn it through your
yeah,
storytelling, and they did not do that.
yeah, yeah. Entertaining as heck, sure, but
That's not
I
yeah, that's not up for debate. That's
that's not
absolutely entertaining.
yeah, and it's not the issue. Like,
Mm-mm.
um, yeah, I expect a little bit more from Star Trek. I like being entertained, but I and again, this is counterbalanced by the good stuff in this episode, which is right up
Yes,
there
of
with
course.
the best things in
Yes.
Star Trek. So it
Agreed.
really is just straight down the middle for me on this one. So yeah.
Yes.
Definitely not saying it's like a 1 out of 10 or anything like that. It's yeah, there's just parts of it need work, I think. I'm really
Yep.
hoping everything turns around in the last 3 episodes. I'm pinning a lot of hope on them, which is a losing battle because that's not how this should work. I should be loving it all the way through. Anyway,
I can neither
because
confirm nor deny that your hopes will be realized.
okay, because that's unfair to those last 3 episodes too, that now
Mhm.
I'm pinning everything on. Anyway, we'll get
Absolutely.
there. Um, so next week's episode is called, or I guess this week's episode. No, next
This
week.
coming week.
It's still
This
Saturday.
this coming week. We'll say this coming week. It's fine. This coming week.
Yeah. The episode is titled Mercy. Um, Interesting title. We'll see. Looking forward to seeing how a lot of these things turn out and how much trouble Rios is going to be in from Picard for what he's done, because I expect a dressing down. There'd better be. Oh, anyway, I'm not going to put expectations. That's whatever. Yeah, I'm still
Yep.
obviously enjoying the season. Like I really enjoy visiting this every week, even when I'm let down by certain things. I still love these characters. I still want to see what happens. And guys, freaking Gaius Baltar's in Star Trek now. Like, I'm
I
so
know,
happy.
right?
um, oh, somebody made a comment, and I totally forgot about this. I think it was Keith DeCandido in his review. I didn't read the review yet, but I just saw kind of he always puts a little excerpt from it. And he's talking about how the whole thing with um, Girardi walking around with the Borg Queen in her head kind of reminded him of Baltar in Battlestar Galactica with Six. And
6 in his head, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, and he was like, yeah, she's walking around the city in a striking red dress now, and Baltar's in the show. What the heck's going on? So I thought that was interesting. I hadn't made that direct connection, but yeah,
Yes. Mhm.
whether subconscious on the part of the producers or not, it's interesting. As George
That
Lucas
it
would
is.
say, it rhymes.
Sure.
Anyway, Brandi, where can people
Yeah.
find you online?
Nowhere.
Fair enough.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I just do not have time for social media right now, but I am on there on Twitter at BrandyUN12. And when there are new things coming up that I'm doing, such as this show, when Dan posts it on Twitter, I retweet it, of course. But basically, when I'm on there, I'm basically retweeting fan art and stuff
Nice.
like that when I have time. But when there's a new episode of anything else I'm doing, of course, I will tweet that as well. So don't expect me to be super there because it's busy time at work and everything and stuff and things like that.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
What about you, Dan? Where are you? Where are you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Kurtrats. It's just Star Trek backwards. I need to get more active on Twitter and stuff too. Like, I don't even retweet fan art. Like, that's awesome. That's cool. Um, and the Positively Trek discussion group on Facebook is also a great place to find me. If I'm not posting, I'm at least checking everything out that other people post. So we'd love to have you join us there. and the Positively Trek podcast that I do with Bruce each and every week. So find that wherever you get your podcasts, as they say on all manner of podcasts. So, yeah, thank you all so much for joining us this week. Again, next week, I won't be able to be here. We might postpone it another week and just do 2 episodes. Not sure. I guess that'll be leading up to the finale then. So those 2 episodes and then the finale. So, oh boy. And the premiere of Strange New Worlds that following week as well. Oh my goodness. This is all happening so fast. Wow.
I'm ready because I've already seen half the season of Strange New Worlds.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it was a surprise to me as well, because generally when they send out screeners for a new season or a new series, they do it about 2.5 weeks in advance, and they send you 3 episodes in one go. And so I was really super surprised when last Friday, not this past Friday, but the Friday before, I got an email that said, "Oh, hey, you have been selected to receive these screeners of episodes 1 through 5 of Strange New Worlds." And I'm like, yeah, we're watching all those that night. And we did.
That's crazy. I'm jealous. Well, yeah, we'll be asking you not to spoil anything week to week, of course. And I know, of course, you would never. So, yeah.
I would never. I can't say anything about it regarding whether I love it or hate it. And I'm sorry. The horrible thing is that I can't talk about it with anyone but Dave, really. So that is difficult for me, because there are things that I want to discuss, obviously with you, Dan, and with other people, and I simply can't. So I am containing myself, but inside I am, just almost enraged that I can't spill the beans. So
I won't highlight TJ's comment, but same. Same. Yeah.
Well, you should have seen my reaction when I saw the email at work. Thankfully, I have a very understanding assistant who knows of my obsessions. And I told her, when I get the email for those screeners at some point, I'm going to be a mess. That was the case. That was the case.
I can well imagine. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And thanks, Brandi, as always. This is so much fun and a highlight of my week, as I've said. And I hope it's a highlight of everyone else's week as well. And Brandi, you as well. Thank you. Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, we'll see you all in the future. Have a great night, everyone, and live long and prosper. And I'm doing the left-handed Tuvok Vulcan salute because I need the other hand to end the broadcast.
Yep.